I used to think my Grandma Aurora was an open book, bound in sunshine and sprinkled with the scent of lavender. Her life, as I knew it, was a simple melody of baking apple pies, tending her rose garden, and knitting endless scarves for the less fortunate. She was the kind of woman who made lemonade on sweltering summer days and told stories that chased away the winter blues. Her eyes, the color of a summer sky after a gentle rain, always held a comforting warmth, a silent promise that everything would be all right, even when it felt like the world was crumbling around you. Growing up, her house was my sanctuary. It was a place where scrapes and bruises were kissed better with a sprinkle of sugar, where fears were whispered away with the gentle hum of her lullabies, and where the world outside seemed to fade into a distant, unimportant hum. She was my confidant, my protector, my unwavering source of love and acceptance. I confided in her my childhood dreams of becoming a ballerina, my teenage anxieties about fitting in, and my young adult struggles with finding my place in the world. And she always listened, her blue eyes sparkling with understanding, her hand gently patting mine, offering silent, unwavering support. Even as I grew older, and the world became a more complex and confusing place, Grandma Aurora remained my anchor. Her wisdom was a beacon, guiding me through the storms of life. Her love was a constant, a comforting presence that never wavered. I believed I knew her inside and out. I believed I understood the rhythm of her days, the quiet joys that filled her heart, the gentle sorrows that occasionally clouded her eyes. That was until she was gone. The silence that settled over her house after she passed was deafening. The scent of lavender seemed to fade, replaced by a hollow emptiness that echoed in every room. It felt like a part of me had been ripped away, leaving a gaping hole in my heart. Sorting through her belongings in the days that followed was a bittersweet ache, a painful reminder of the vibrant life that had filled those spaces, now forever stilled. It was in the attic, a dusty, forgotten space filled with cobwebs and forgotten treasures, that I found it. Tucked away in the corner, beneath a stack of old quilts and moth-eaten photographs, was a wooden box. It was small, no bigger than a loaf of bread, and intricately carved with floral patterns that seemed both familiar and strangely foreign. The wood was dark and worn, the carvings softened by time and touch. It looked like something from another era. My heart skipped a beat as I lifted the box, its weight surprisingly substantial. Dust swirled around me as I carried it downstairs, the silence of the house amplifying the sound of my own footsteps. I placed it gently on the worn wooden table in the kitchen, the same table where Grandma Aurora had kneaded dough for her famous apple pies, where we had shared countless cups of tea and whispered secrets. For a long moment I just stared at the box, a strange sense of anticipation building inside me. It felt like holding a piece of her, a hidden part of her that I had never known existed. I ran my fingers over the smooth, worn wood, tracing the delicate carvings, feeling a connection to her that transcended the physical. Then I saw it. A small faded note tucked beneath a loose piece of twine that bound the box shut. The handwriting was undeniably hers, elegant and flowing, even with the tremor of age. My breath hitched as I recognized the familiar loop of her A's and the gentle slant of her letters. I carefully untied the twine and unfolded the brittle paper, my hands trembling slightly. The words, written in faded ink, seemed to leap off the page. My dearest, and the note trailed off with the name that I assume would be mine. Don't open that box until after I'm gone. It holds a story I was never brave enough to tell. A part of my life I kept hidden for reasons you will soon understand. Please, my love, read it with an open heart and know that everything I did for love. With all my love, Aurora. My heart pounded in my chest. A story she was never brave enough to tell? A hidden part of her life? The words swam before my eyes, blurring with a sudden rush of tears. I had thought I knew her, but this note suggested a life far more complex, far more secretive than I could have ever imagined. With trembling hands I lifted the lid of the box. The scent that wafted out was a mixture of old paper, dried flowers, and something else, something indefinable that spoke of a time long past. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded silk, was a leather-bound diary. The leather was soft and worn, the color a deep, rich brown, almost black in places. The edges of the pages were frayed and yellowed, the ink faded and delicate. It looked incredibly old, like it had been hidden away for decades. I lifted the diary carefully, its weight surprising me. It felt heavy, not just physically, but emotionally. as if it carried the weight of unspoken words and hidden sorrows. I ran my fingers over the cover, feeling the indentations of the leather, the faint impression of words that had long since faded away. As I opened the diary, the first page revealed a date, 1942. My grandmother would have been a young woman then, barely out of her teens. A wave of shock washed over me. This wasn't just a collection of memories. It was a window into a life I knew nothing about. A life lived during a time of war, of upheaval, of unimaginable hardship. The first entry was written in a delicate, flowing script, the words filled with a youthful optimism that belied the grim reality of the world around her. She wrote of her dreams of becoming a teacher, of her love for her family, and of a young man named. The name was smudged, almost illegible, but I could make out the shape of a M and the hint of an I. As I turned the pages, the entries became more frequent, more detailed, painting a vivid picture of her life during the war years. She wrote of rationing and blackouts, of the constant fear of air raids, of the young men who left for war and never returned. But she also wrote of hope, of resilience, of the unwavering spirit of the community that held them together during those dark times. And then I found it. A passage that made my breath catch in my throat. A passage that revealed a secret so profound, so unexpected, that it shattered everything I thought I knew about my Grandma Aurora. She wrote of a forbidden love, a love that blossomed amidst the chaos of war, a love that was both passionate and dangerous. She wrote of a man who was not her husband, a man who was a spy. My hands trembled as I read on, the words blurring with tears. The diary revealed a world of wartime sacrifice, of impossible choices, of a love that defied all odds. It spoke of a legacy that echoed across generations, a legacy of courage, of resilience, and of unwavering love. I closed the diary, my mind reeling. My Grandma Aurora, the woman I thought I knew so well, had lived a life filled with secrets, with hidden passions, with unimaginable sacrifices. The open book I had always believed her to be was, in reality, a tightly locked chest, filled with stories I had never even dreamed existed. The discovery of this diary has changed everything. It has opened my eyes to a part of my grandmother's life that I never knew existed, a part of her that was hidden beneath a veneer of quiet normalcy. It has made me question everything I thought I knew about her, about my family, about myself. And now I feel compelled to share this story, her story, with you. It's a story of love, of loss, of sacrifice, and of the enduring power of the human spirit. It's a story that deserves to be told, a legacy that deserves to be remembered. It is a story about a woman who was far more extraordinary than I ever knew. If you'd like to walk this path with me, to uncover the secrets hidden within these pages, to learn about the forbidden love and wartime sacrifices that shaped my Grandma Aurora's life, then subscribe and stay close. This is just the beginning of a journey into the past, a journey that promises to reveal a truth more profound and more moving than I could have ever imagined. This is the story of Grandma Aurora's hidden diary, and I invite you to discover it with me. The scent of old paper and dried lavender clung to the diary, a comforting perfume that seemed to whisper secrets. As I opened it, the world around me seemed to soften, the sharp edges of the present blurring into the hazy warmth of memory. It wasn't my memory, not exactly, but it felt as familiar as the lines on my own hands. The script was Aurora's, looping and elegant, each word a step back in time. Willow Creek. The name itself tasted of sunshine and creek water, of dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. It wasn't a place you'd find on any important map, just a quiet corner of the world nestled in the rolling hills, a patchwork of farms and orchards stitched together by dirt roads. In the late 1930s, the world beyond Willow Creek felt impossibly far away. The rumble of distant wars, the anxieties of bustling cities, they were just whispers carried on the wind, hardly touching the surface of our days. Our farm was on the edge of town, a sprawling expanse of cornfields and apple trees that stretched as far as the eye could see. The farmhouse, with its wide porch and faded paint, was the heart of our world, a place of laughter and hard work, of shared meals and whispered secrets. I was Aurora then, a girl of 10 with scraped knees and a head full of stories. My world was bounded by the creek that ran through our property, the towering oak tree in the backyard, and the endless blue of the summer sky. I wasn't particularly pretty, not like my younger sister Lily, with her golden curls and eyes the color of forget-me-nots. But I had a mind that wandered, a heart that felt things deeply, and a quiet yearning for something I couldn't quite name. Mama always said I was too sensitive for my own good. I could cry at the sight of a broken bird's wing or spend hours lost in the pages of a book, forgetting the chores that awaited me. Papa, a man of few words but endless patience, would just smile and ruffle my hair, telling me that a little dreaming never hurt anyone. Thomas, my older brother, was everything I wasn't: bold, adventurous, and utterly fearless. He dreamed of flying, of soaring above the clouds like the eagles he watched circling over the fields. He spent hours tinkering with engines and building model airplanes, his eyes alight with a passion that both fascinated and intimidated me. He promised me that one day he'd take me up in his plane and show me the world from above. Lily, my little sister, was a poet at heart. She saw beauty in everything, from the delicate petals of a wildflower to the shimmering scales of a fish. She filled notebooks with her poems, verses about the wind and the stars, about the secrets hidden in the rustling leaves. She was my confidant, my shadow, the one person who truly understood the restless spirit that stirred within me. Our days were simple, governed by the rhythm of the seasons. In the spring we helped Mama plant the garden, our hands stained with soil and the air thick with the scent of blooming flowers. Summer was for swimming in the creek, for chasing fireflies in the twilight, for picnics under the shade of the oak tree. Autumn brought the harvest, the sweet smell of apples filling the air, the crackling bonfires that lit up the night sky. And winter was a time for storytelling by the fireplace, for watching the snow fall softly outside the window, for dreaming of the spring to come. Evenings were the best. After supper we'd gather on the porch, Papa with his pipe, Mama with her knitting, Thomas with his head buried in a book about airplanes, Lily scribbling in her notebook, and me gazing up at the stars. The sky above Willow Creek was a canvas of infinite possibilities, a vast expanse of shimmering light that seemed to beckon me, to whisper promises of adventures yet to come. I would lie awake in bed, listening to the crickets chirping outside my window, wondering what lay beyond the horizon. I knew deep down that Willow Creek wasn't the only world there was. I read about faraway lands, about bustling cities and towering mountains, about people who lived lives so different from our own. And I yearned with a quiet intensity to see it all, to experience it all, to find my place in the grand tapestry of the world. But those dreams felt like secrets, whispers I dared not speak aloud. My family was my world, my anchor, the only reality I knew. How could I ever leave them, leave the farm, leave the familiar comfort of Willow Creek? One evening Mama sat beside me on the porch swing. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, and the moon hung like a silver coin in the sky. She put her arm around me, her hand warm against my back. "You're a dreamer, Aurora," she said softly. "I see it in your eyes. Don't ever let anyone take that away from you." I leaned into her, breathing in her familiar scent of lavender and sunshine. "But what if my dreams take me away from here?" I whispered. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Sometimes the things we love the most are the things we have to let go of." Her words stayed with me, a seed planted in my heart. I didn't understand them then, not fully. But I knew instinctively that they held a truth, a warning, a promise of things to come. The summers in Willow Creek were long and languid, filled with the buzzing of bees and the chirping of crickets. But even in the midst of that idyllic peace, I felt a restlessness stirring within me, a sense that something was about to change. The world outside was rumbling, growing louder, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it wouldn't be long before it reached our quiet corner of the world. One afternoon, I found Lily sitting under the oak tree, her notebook open on her lap. She was staring up at the sky, her eyes filled with a faraway look. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, sitting down beside her. She turned to me, her face pale and serious. "I had a dream last night," she said. "A terrible dream. I saw fire and smoke and everything was broken." I shivered despite the warmth of the sun. "It was just a dream," I said, trying to reassure her and myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily's dream was more than just a dream. It was a premonition, a glimpse into a future that I desperately hoped would never come to pass. Those were the days of innocence, the days before the storm, the days when Willow Creek felt like the center of the universe, when my family was my whole world, when my only worries were scraped knees and unfulfilled dreams. I didn't know then how precious those days were, how fleeting, how easily they could be shattered. And I certainly didn't know the secrets that were hidden, waiting to be unearthed, Secrets that would change everything I thought I knew about my family, about my past, about myself. Secrets like the one contained within that box. The box my grandmother had warned me never to open until after she was gone. A box that held the key to a life I never knew she lived. A life filled with courage, sacrifice, and a love that spanned continents and decades. A box that would finally reveal the truth behind the diary I now held in my trembling hands. The truth about Aurora. The honeyed light of those Willow Creek summers couldn't last forever, could it? Even the sweetest things eventually leave a bitter taste on the tongue. The war, you see, started whispering long before it roared. At first, it was just static crackling on the radio, interrupting the Sunday afternoon music programs. We'd sit in the parlor, the scent of Mama's lemon polish hanging in the air, and listen to the news reports from Europe. Names of places we couldn't pronounce, battles we couldn't imagine. It felt distant, like a story someone else was living. But then the whispers grew louder, closer. Letters started arriving from cousins who'd moved to the cities, talking about rationing and blackouts. Mr. Abernathy at the general store began putting up posters urging people to buy war bonds. Even the laughter at the Friday night dances seemed a little strained, a little too loud, as if we were all trying to drown out a sound we couldn't quite hear but knew was coming. Thomas, my brother, he was different. While Mama and Papa worried, their faces etched with lines that seemed to deepen with each passing week, Thomas got a glint in his eye. He saw opportunity, adventure. He'd spend hours poring over maps of Europe, tracing the lines of battle with his finger. He talked about joining up, about seeing the world, about doing his part. Papa would just shake his head, a weary sadness in his eyes. He'd seen enough of war in his own youth, and he didn't want his son rushing off to find glory in it. Me? I felt lost. The world I knew, the safe, predictable world of Willow Creek, was shifting beneath my feet. The dreams I'd nurtured, the romantic notions I'd held so dear, suddenly felt flimsy, inadequate. The war wasn't just a collection of battles and dates. It was a cloud hanging over everything, a weight pressing down on our lives. I started questioning everything. The stories I'd been told, the values I'd been taught. Was the world really as simple as good versus evil? Was justice always on the side of the powerful? I spent more and more time by the creek, watching the water flow, trying to find some sense of peace, some sense of understanding. But the creek, which had always been a source of comfort, now seemed to reflect my own unease, its gentle murmur a constant reminder of the world's relentless march forward. Then he arrived. It was a Tuesday afternoon, I remember. I was helping Mama in the garden, weeding the rows of tomatoes. The sun was beating down, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and blossoms. A dust cloud billowed up the long dirt lane, announcing his arrival. A jeep pulled up to the front of the house, and a young man stepped out. He was in uniform, but not like any uniform I'd seen before. It was foreign. A darker green, a different cut. He stood tall, ramrod straight, his shoulders squared, his gaze intense. He wasn't like the local boys, all awkward angles and easy smiles. There was a stillness about him, a contained energy that made him seem older than his years. He walked towards us, his boots crunching on the gravel. He didn't smile. He simply nodded, a curt, almost formal greeting. "I'm looking for the Henderson farm," he said, his voice low and accented, the words precise, measured. Mama, bless her heart, wiped her hands on her apron and offered him a glass of lemonade. "You found it," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "I'm Martha Henderson, and this is my daughter Aurora." He nodded again, his eyes flicking to me and then away, as if he were afraid of lingering too long. "Elias," he said, offering his name like a carefully guarded secret. "Elias Volkov. He stayed for a week." He said he was on leave, visiting a friend who lived nearby. But there was something off. He never mentioned his friend's name, never spoke about his life before the war. He spent most of his time walking the fields, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He was polite, helpful, but always distant. He helped Papa repair the barn roof, his movements efficient and precise. He spoke little, but his hands were strong and capable. He ate dinner with us each night, but he never joined in the conversation, content to listen, his eyes dark and watchful. I found myself drawn to him despite myself. He was so different from anyone I'd ever met. The local boys were all about baseball and gossip and dreams of owning their own farms. Elias, he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. There was a sadness in his eyes, a weariness that belied his youth. One evening, I found him sitting by the creek, the same creek that had been my solace, his face illuminated by the fading light. I hesitated, unsure whether to approach him, but something compelled me forward. "It's beautiful here, isn't it?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned, his eyes meeting mine. For a moment, I felt as if I could see straight into his soul. "It is," he said, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "But beauty, it doesn't last." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the creek, the chirping of the crickets. Then he turned to me, his expression serious. "This war," he said, his voice low and grave. "It will change everything. Nothing will ever be the same." I knew he was right. I could feel it in my bones. The world was changing, and we were all caught in its current, swept along towards an unknown future. The day he left, he found me in the barn tending to the horses. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the sunlight. He looked different, more vulnerable somehow. "Aurora," he said, his voice barely audible. I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. It was plain, unadorned, but it felt heavy in my hands. "Don't open that box until after I'm gone," he said, his eyes pleading. "Promise me." I looked at him confused. "What is it?" I asked. He shook his head. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Just promise me you won't open it until I'm gone." I hesitated, then nodded. "I promise," I said, my voice trembling. He smiled, a fleeting sad smile. "Thank you," he said. "And be careful, Aurora. The world is a dangerous place." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the sunlight. I stood there, clutching the wooden box, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Curiosity, fear, and a profound sense of loss. He was right about one thing. The world was a dangerous place. And my life, I knew, would never be the same. I should have listened. I should have waited. But curiosity, like a persistent weed, took root and flourished. The moment his Jeep disappeared down the lane, leaving behind only a cloud of dust and the echo of its engine, I ran inside, my heart pounding in my chest. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on the bed, the wooden box resting in my lap. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a photograph. It was a picture of Elias younger, his face unlined, his eyes filled with a light I had never seen. Standing beside him was a woman, her hair dark, her eyes bright, her smile radiant. They were holding hands, their fingers intertwined. On the back of the photograph, scrawled in hurried handwriting, were 2 words: "Never forget." And then I understood. Elias wasn't just a soldier on leave. He was running from something. He was carrying a secret. And that secret, I feared, was about to change my life forever. The innocence of Willow Creek was gone, replaced by a darkness I couldn't comprehend, a darkness that was about to engulf us all. The war wasn't just a distant rumble anymore. It had arrived, in the form of a small wooden box and a photograph, whispering its secrets in my ear. The evenings became our sanctuary, stolen moments carved out of the encroaching darkness. We met by the creek, the same one where I'd skipped stones as a girl, now a hushed witness to secrets and whispered promises. The air grew colder as autumn tightened its grip, but the chill never reached me when Elias was near. He'd wait for me in the shadows, a dark silhouette against the silvered water, his face etched with a worry that mirrored my own. "Aurora." He'd breathe my name, a prayer on his lips. His touch was tentative at first, a brush against my cheek, a lingering hold on my hand. But soon our embraces became less hesitant, more desperate. We clung to each other, finding solace in the shared warmth, a fragile shield against the storm gathering around us. I hadn't felt this alive, this hopeful, in what seemed like a lifetime. And that, I knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. One particularly bleak evening, the wind howling like a banshee through the skeletal trees, Elias's usual gentle smile was absent. His eyes, usually so full of warmth, were clouded with a deep sadness. He pulled me close, his grip almost painful. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice barely a whisper above the wind. He pulled away slightly, searching my face as if looking for a sign of judgment, of fear. Something I should have told you sooner. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. I'm not who I seem to be, Aurora. I was a scientist. In Germany. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. A scientist. In Germany. The implications crashed over me like a wave. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the gentle, kind man I held in my arms with the image of a Nazi scientist. He saw the doubt flicker in my eyes. No, he pleaded, his voice thick with emotion. Not like that. I didn't believe in what they were doing. I couldn't. I saw what they were capable of, the horrors they were planning. I couldn't be a part of it. He explained, then, about his work on a new type of encryption device, something so powerful it could render all Allied communications useless. He had been tasked with perfecting it, but instead he'd sabotaged the project, destroying what he could and fleeing with the knowledge that he had to stop them. He was a deserter, hunted by both sides, trapped between two evils. My mentor, a brilliant clockmaker named Herr Schmidt, helped me escape. He knew the danger, the importance of keeping this technology out of the wrong hands. Before they caught him, he entrusted me with a mission. To find the device, the prototype, and keep it safe. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a desperate plea for understanding. It's here, Aurora. Somewhere close. Herr Schmidt left clues, riddles hidden within his clocks. I've been trying to decipher them, but... He trailed off, frustration etched on his face. I believed him. I had to. Despite the fear that gnawed at me, the doubt that whispered in the back of my mind, I saw the truth in his eyes. I saw the pain, the desperation, the unwavering conviction, and I loved him for it. What can I do? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. He looked at me surprised. You want to help? I nodded. I do. Tell me about the clues. Tell me everything. And so we began to work together, poring over the intricate workings of Herr Schmidt's clocks, searching for hidden meanings in the placement of gears, the rhythm of the ticking. Days bled into nights as we deciphered the clues, our hope growing with each solved riddle. Meanwhile, a subtle but insidious change was creeping through Willow Creek. Strangers arrived, their faces unfamiliar, their eyes too sharp, too watchful. They blended in, dressed like farmers and shopkeepers, but their presence felt like a cold hand on my heart. I saw them watching us, Elias and me, their gaze lingering a little too long, their questions a little too pointed. Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, noticed it too. Something ain't right, Aurora, she confided one afternoon, her voice low and worried. Folks are acting strange, whispering behind their hands. It's like a cloud settled over the town. The danger was closing in, tightening its grip around us. I felt it in the air, in the wary glances of my neighbors, in the growing sense of unease that settled in my stomach. Then one evening, as we sat huddled together in the library, surrounded by Herr Schmidt's clocks, Elias finally cracked the last code. The final clue led us to the old church, to a hidden labyrinth beneath the sanctuary. The church, I whispered, incredulous. But why there? Herr Schmidt was a deeply religious man, Elias explained. He believed that some things were too dangerous to be entrusted to anyone, except perhaps God himself. He hid the device where no one would think to look, in the heart of our community, under the protection of the church. That night, under the cloak of a new moon, we slipped into the church. The air inside was heavy with the scent of incense and dust, the silence broken only by the creaking of the ancient timbers. We found the entrance to the labyrinth hidden behind the altar, a narrow passage leading down into the darkness. As we descended, a chilling realization washed over me. This wasn't just about protecting a device or saving the world. This was about me, about who I was becoming. Was I brave enough to risk everything, not just for Elias but for something bigger than myself? Could I protect my family? My diary became my confidant, the silent witness to my internal turmoil. I wrote of my love for Elias, a love that had blossomed in the midst of chaos. I wrote of my fear, my doubt, my growing sense of responsibility. I wrote of the woman I was becoming, a woman I barely recognized, a woman who was willing to fight for what she believed in. Dearest diary, I wrote one particularly dark night. I never imagined my life would lead me here, to this place of shadows and secrets. But I can't turn back now. I won't. I love Elias and I believe in what he's doing. And I believe in myself. I will protect him. I will protect my family. I will do whatever it takes. That night, as I closed the diary and placed it back in its hiding place, I knew that I had crossed a line. There was no going back to the quiet, predictable life I once knew. I was now a player in a dangerous game, a game that could cost me everything. But I was ready, because for the first time in a long time I felt like I had a purpose. And that purpose, fueled by love and a growing sense of courage, was stronger than any fear. Little did I know the greatest test of my courage was yet to come. The labyrinth held more than just the encryption device. It held secrets, long-buried truths that would shatter my world and force me to confront the very foundations of my beliefs. And as we ventured deeper into the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the enemy was closer than we thought, and that the price of our love might be higher than we could ever imagine. The air in the chamber was thick, ancient. It tasted of damp stone and something else, something metallic like old blood. Elias held the lantern high, its beam dancing across the walls, revealing carvings I couldn't decipher. They seemed to writhe in the flickering light, telling stories I was desperate to understand, stories swallowed by time. The mechanism, the final lock, was a marvel of gears and springs, a miniature clock face etched onto the stone itself. A final cruel joke from Herr Schmidt, his mentor. Elias traced the clock face with a calloused finger. "He always did love a puzzle," he murmured, more to himself than to me. He adjusted the hands, listening intently for the tumblers to click. The silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic thump-thump of my own heart. I could feel the cold seeping into my bones, a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the underground. It was fear, pure and sharp, a premonition that clung to me like a shroud. Then a click. A low rumble echoed through the chamber as a section of the wall slid inward, revealing a small alcove. Inside, resting on a velvet cushion faded with age, was the device. It wasn't what I expected. I had imagined something grand, imposing, but it was small, intricate, crafted from a dark metal that seemed to absorb the light. It hummed faintly, a vibration I felt more than heard, a whisper of power that both terrified and fascinated me. Elias reached for it, his hand hovering above. "Careful," he breathed. "We don't know what it does." But before he could touch it, a sound shattered the silence. Boots. Heavy, hurried, unmistakable. They were close. Too close. "They're here," I whispered, my voice trembling. Elias's eyes flashed. He grabbed the device, shoving it into my hands. "Take it," he said, his voice urgent. "Get out of here, Aurora. Now." "But, Elias." "No arguments," he snapped, his eyes hard. "I know the tunnels better than they do. I'll lead them away. You have to go. You know what this is for." He was right. I knew what was at stake. But the thought of leaving him, it was unbearable. "I'm not leaving you," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. "You have to," he said, his voice softening. "For me. For everyone." And then the first shot rang out. It echoed through the chamber, deafening, sending chips of stone flying. Elias pushed me towards the opening in the wall, the one we had just created. "Go!" he yelled, drawing his own pistol. I hesitated, my heart tearing in two. I looked back at him, his face a mask of determination, his eyes filled with a love that burned brighter than any lantern. "I love you," I choked out. "I love you too," he said, his voice barely audible above the sounds of approaching gunfire. "Now go. And don't open that box until after I'm gone." I turned and ran blindly, desperately, into the darkness. The tunnels were a maze, a labyrinth of twisting passages and dead ends. I could hear the shouts of the soldiers behind me, their footsteps pounding on the stone. I stumbled, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my lungs burning. The device felt heavy in my hands, a burden I wasn't sure I could bear. I followed the memory of our path, the faint scratches Elias had made on the walls, the subtle shifts in the air current. Each turn, each corner brought a fresh wave of terror, a renewed fear that they would catch me, that they would take the device, that I would never see Elias again. Then another shot, closer this time, and then silence. A silence so profound, so absolute that it was more terrifying than the gunfire. I stopped, my legs trembling, my body shaking. I wanted to turn back, to go back to Elias, but I knew I couldn't. I had to keep going. I had to honor his sacrifice. I pressed on, my tears blurring my vision, my heart aching with a pain I had never known. I ran until I reached the hidden exit, the one Elias had shown me weeks ago, the one concealed behind a crumbling section of the church wall. I pushed it open, emerging into the cold night air, gasping for breath. The churchyard was deserted, bathed in the pale glow of the moon. I ran, stumbling through the overgrown grass, towards the woods that bordered the town. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of the trees, until I was hidden from view, until I could finally collapse, sobbing, onto the damp earth. Elias was gone. He was really gone. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. He was gone and I was alone. Alone with the device, alone with the weight of the world on my shoulders. I stayed there for hours, huddled beneath the trees, weeping until I had no tears left. The world felt cold and empty, devoid of hope. I clutched the device to my chest, its faint hum the only sound in the stillness of the night. As dawn approached, a sliver of light breaking through the trees, I knew I couldn't stay there. I had to move on. I had to find a way to honor Elias's sacrifice, to fulfill the mission he had entrusted to me. I pulled the diary from my satchel, the worn leather familiar and comforting in my trembling hands. I opened it to a blank page and began to write. I wrote about Elias, about his courage, his kindness, his love. I wrote about the chamber, about the device, about the soldiers who had taken him from me. I wrote about my grief, my fear, my despair. As I wrote, something began to shift within me. The words, clumsy and broken as they were, began to form a bridge, a connection between the past and the future. The diary became my anchor, my tether to reality. It was a way to remember Elias, to keep his memory alive. It was also a way to understand what I had to do, what I had to become. I knew then that my life would never be the same. The carefree girl who had laughed and danced with Elias was gone, replaced by someone else, someone harder, someone stronger, someone burdened with a purpose. I closed the diary, my hand resting on its cover. I looked up at the rising sun, its warmth a faint comfort on my frozen skin. I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with danger and uncertainty. But I also knew that I couldn't give up. I owed it to Elias. I owed it to everyone who had suffered under the Nazi regime. I owed it to myself. I stood up, my legs still shaky, my body still aching. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the crisp morning air. I clutched the device tightly in my hand, its hum resonating through my body. I didn't open the box. Not yet. I would wait. I would wait until I was ready. I would wait until I understood what Elias had meant, until I understood the true purpose of the device. I would wait until after I was gone, just as he had asked. But I knew, deep in my heart, that the moment I opened that box, everything would change again. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was the only one who could do it. I was the only one who could carry on his legacy. I was the only one who could finish what he had started. And so I walked away from the woods, away from the memory of Elias, towards an unknown future. I walked towards my destiny. The diary, tucked safely in my satchel, was my only companion. The device, clutched tightly in my hand, was my only weapon. And the love in my heart, the love that Elias had given me, was my only strength. The labyrinth spat me out like a bad taste. One moment the earth was shaking, Elias was gone, and I was clutching something cold and heavy in my hand. The next, I was blinking in the weak afternoon light, the familiar scent of damp earth and pine needles stinging my nostrils. My breath hitched, a ragged sob clawing its way up my throat. I swallowed it down, tasting blood and dust. I ran. Not gracefully, not heroically, but like a hunted animal. Each footfall was a protest, my muscles screaming, my lungs burning. The artifact, nestled against my chest beneath my torn shirt, felt like a lead weight, a constant reminder. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. By the time I stumbled through the back door of the house, the sun was sinking, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. The kitchen was empty, the air thick with the lingering smell of the apple pie Martha had baked that morning. Felt like a lifetime ago. I leaned against the counter, the cold tile a stark contrast to the fever burning in my skin. My reflection in the darkened window was a stranger. Eyes wide and haunted, hair matted with dirt, A smear of blood on my cheek. I flinched away. I couldn't bear to look at myself. Not yet. The official story was simple, clean, and a lie. A tragic accident. A cave-in. Elias, bless his adventurous heart, had been exploring an old mine shaft, and the unstable ground had given way. The authorities were sympathetic, the neighbors clucked their tongues, and Martha wept openly. I wept in the dark, alone. The first night was the worst. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside the window, was Elias's ghost come to haunt me. I lay rigid in bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence of physical presence pressing down on me. Sleep offered no escape, only fragmented images of falling rock, Elias's desperate smile, the unbearable weight of the artifact. I avoided mirrors. I flinched when anyone spoke my name. I moved through the house like a ghost myself, unseen, unheard. The world felt muted, distant, as if I were watching it all through a thick pane of glass. The diary became my refuge. I didn't write much at first, just fragments, broken sentences, desperate pleas whispered onto the page. Asterisk Elias. Gone. Asterisk it should have been me. Asterisk the box. He said. Asterisk the words were clumsy, inadequate, but they were a lifeline. A way to tether myself to reality, to the memory of him. I held the diary close, tracing the worn leather cover with my fingertips, remembering the day he gave it to me. For your thoughts, Aurora, he'd said, his eyes twinkling. The ones you keep locked away. Now it was a repository for the ones I couldn't speak aloud. The artifact I hid under the floorboards in my room, wrapped in an old linen cloth. Every time I touched it, a shiver ran down my spine. It hummed with a strange energy, a low thrum that resonated deep within my bones. It was beautiful, undeniably so, crafted from a dark, unfamiliar metal, etched with symbols I didn't understand. But it was also dangerous. I felt it, a lurking presence, a promise and a threat. My family meant well, of course. Martha brought me tea, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. John offered platitudes about time healing all wounds. They saw my sorrow, but they couldn't see the chasm that had opened up inside me. The secret I carried like a stone in my heart. The disconnection was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, to share the burden of grief and fear. But I couldn't. I was trapped in a cage of my own making, bound by Elias's last words, by the knowledge that the truth would only bring more danger, more pain. So I smiled, a brittle, empty smile. I nodded, I murmured agreement, I played the part of the grieving widow. And inside I slowly began to harden. One afternoon, sifting through Elias's belongings, I found a hidden compartment in his desk. Inside, nestled amongst old maps and geological surveys, was a small leather-bound notebook. It was filled with his familiar scrawl, a mixture of observations, sketches, and cryptic notes. I recognized some of the symbols. They were the same ones etched on the artifact. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. This was the key. I spent hours poring over the notebook, deciphering his handwriting, piecing together fragments of information. He had been researching something ancient and powerful. He had been following a trail, a thread that led back through history, to forgotten civilizations and hidden secrets. And now that trail was mine. The grief was still there, a constant ache in my soul. But it was no longer the only thing I felt. A new emotion was taking root, a fragile seedling pushing its way through the darkness. Purpose. I started small. I went to the local library, spending hours in the dusty archives, searching for any mention of the symbols, the artifact, the places Elias had written about. I learned about forgotten languages, ancient mythologies, obscure historical figures. I snuck into Elias's study at night, poring over his maps, tracing his routes with my finger. I felt him there, in the scent of old paper and pipe tobacco, in the faint echo of his laughter. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about glory. It was about honoring him, about finishing what he had started. It was about protecting the world from whatever darkness he had uncovered. I was still grieving, still broken, but I was no longer adrift. I had a direction, a purpose, a reason to keep going. The box. I hadn't forgotten, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed to understand more, to prepare myself for whatever it held. I sat at my desk, the diary open before me, and began to write. Asterisk, he saved me. He trusted me. I won't let him down. Asterisk asterisk the world thinks he died in an accident. They don't know what he sacrificed. They don't know what he protected. Asterisk asterisk I will keep his secret. I will carry his burden. I will find out the truth. Asterisk and when I'm ready I will open the box. Here we go. Adjust shawl settles deeper into chair. My bones ache a little these days, but the memories, they're as sharp as shards of glass. After burying Mama and Papa, and after Elias, Willow Creek became a cage. Every familiar face, every cobblestone path, whispered of loss. I couldn't breathe there anymore. I needed to disappear, to become a ghost in a place where no one knew my name, where the echoes of laughter and love wouldn't haunt every corner. So I packed a small bag, mostly Elias's diary, in the box, of course. The box? It felt heavier than it should, a physical manifestation of the secret I now carried. I left Willow Creek on a gray morning, the train chugging like an old man with a bad cough. I watched the familiar landscape blur into a smudge of green and brown, each mile taking me further away from the past and deeper into an uncertain future. I chose a city at random, really. It was large enough to swallow me whole, to offer anonymity. I found a small room above a bakery, the air perpetually thick with the sweet scent of yeast and sugar. The landlady, a stout woman named Mrs. Petrov, was more interested in her rent than my history, which suited me just fine. The room was sparse, a bed, a small table, a chair worn smooth by time. But it was safe for now. The silence in that room was deafening at first. In Willow Creek, even the silence had been filled with the murmur of life, of connection. Here it was just empty. I spent the first few days mostly staring at the box, afraid to open it, afraid of what I might find, afraid of what it might demand of me. Elias's diary became my lifeline. His elegant script, filled with technical jargon and cryptic notes, was the only voice I recognized. I spent hours poring over it, trying to decipher his thinking, his intentions. He had been so brilliant, so ahead of his time. I, on the other hand, felt like a child trying to understand a language I barely knew. The diary spoke of encryption algorithms, of frequencies and patterns, of a key that could unlock unimaginable potential. The artifact, he hinted, was not just a sophisticated encryption device, but something more, a tool for understanding, for anticipating. He believed it could be used to protect, to even to change the course of the war. That's when I knew I had to open the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a device of polished wood and intricate gears. It hummed faintly, almost imperceptibly when I touched it. Felt alive. I spent weeks just studying it, tracing its lines with my fingertips, trying to understand how it worked. Elias's notes were helpful but incomplete. I realized I needed more knowledge, more understanding. So I started going to the library. I spent hours poring over books on cryptography, on mathematics, on history. I learned about Alan Turing and the Enigma machine, about the Navajo code talkers, about the power of information in wartime. The librarian, a kind, bespectacled man named Mr. Abernathy, noticed my dedication and started recommending books, sharing articles. He didn't know why I was so interested, and I certainly didn't tell him. I also sought out discreet consultations. An old watchmaker, rumored to have worked on sensitive government projects, taught me about the mechanics of the device. A retired linguist helped me decipher some of Elias's more obscure notes. I paid them in cash, always careful not to reveal too much. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to understand. The artifact was indeed a powerful intelligence tool. It could decipher enemy codes, predict their movements, anticipate their strategies. It was like having a window into their minds. But understanding the device was only half the battle. I needed to learn how to use it, how to protect myself. I started practicing observation, learning to blend into crowds, to notice subtle details. I learned to listen more than I spoke, to analyze body language, to anticipate danger. I practiced decoding messages, starting with simple ciphers and gradually working my way up to more complex ones. I learned to create my own codes, to communicate discreetly, to leave messages in plain sight that only I could understand. It was a lonely life. I missed Mama's warm hugs, Papa's comforting presence, Elias's bright smile. The constant fear of being discovered weighed heavily on me. But I knew I couldn't give up. I had a responsibility, a duty to Elias, to his memory, to the world. One evening, while walking home from the library, I noticed a man watching me. He was tall and thin, with a sharp, angular face and eyes that seemed to bore into me. He wore a dark coat, even though the weather was mild. He stood in the shadows just out of reach, but I knew he was there. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned down a side street trying to lose him. But he was still there, a silent shadow in the darkness. I ducked into a crowded marketplace, hoping to blend in. I pushed through the throng of people, my senses on high alert. I saw him again across the square. He was talking to another man, a burly fellow with a scar on his cheek. They were looking in my direction. I knew they were after me, after the artifact. I slipped into a narrow alleyway, my breath catching in my throat. I knew I couldn't stay here. I had to move, to disappear again. I had to protect the artifact no matter the cost. That night I packed my bag again. I left Mrs. Petrov a note and some extra money. I slipped out into the darkness, leaving behind the small room above the bakery, leaving behind the sweet scent of yeast and sugar. I was a ghost again, moving through the shadows, always one step ahead of my pursuers. I learned to trust my instincts, to rely on my own resourcefulness. I learned to use the city to my advantage, to navigate its labyrinthine streets, to find safe havens in unexpected places. I learned to be invisible, to be anonymous, to be a shadow in the night. The artifact became an extension of myself, a part of my very being. I learned to listen to its hum, to feel its energy, to understand its secrets. I used it to gather information, to decipher enemy communications, to anticipate their moves. I became a one-woman intelligence operation, a silent guardian of a powerful secret. It wasn't easy. There were times when I was scared, when I was lonely, when I wanted to give up. But then I would think of Elias, of his sacrifice, of his belief in the power of knowledge. And I would keep going, driven by his memory, fueled by my determination. I knew the Nazis were still searching for the artifact. I could feel their presence, like a dark cloud looming over me. I knew they would never stop, that they would hunt me to the ends of the earth. But I was ready for them. I was no longer the grieving girl who had left Willow Creek. I was something more. I was a survivor, a protector, a warrior. I was Aurora, and I would not be defeated. The war raged on, and I continued my work, gathering information, deciphering codes, protecting the artifact. I knew I was making a difference, however small. I knew I was honoring Elias's memory, fulfilling his legacy. And as I sat there alone in my small room, surrounded by books and maps and codes, I felt a strange sense of peace. I was no longer afraid. I was ready for whatever the future might hold, because I knew deep down that even in the darkest of times, hope could still flicker, knowledge could still prevail, and love could still endure. That little box, it was proof of that. And I would protect it with every fiber of my being. The hum of the artifact vibrated in my hand, a constant, low thrum that had become as familiar as the beating of my own heart. It wasn't a comfortable feeling, not exactly. It was more like a low-grade fever, a persistent awareness that something vital, something enormous hung in the balance. Elias's gift, his love made manifest in intricately carved metal and glowing crystal, was now my lifeline, and more importantly, a lifeline for so many others I would never meet. The diary entries from that time are fragmented, filled with dates, coded locations, and brief, almost clinical observations. Gone were the poetic musings on the sunset, the tender descriptions of Elias's smile. Now it was all business, a desperate race against the clock. I learned to manipulate the artifact with a skill born of necessity. I could intercept enemy communications, reroute their supply lines, even subtly influence their troop movements. It was a dangerous game played in the shadows with the fate of nations as the stakes. There was the time I managed to divert a convoy carrying vital fuel supplies destined for a German U-boat base. The diary entry for that day simply reads, "Rain. Cold. Success." But I remember the bone-deep weariness that followed, the gnawing fear that I'd been discovered, the silent prayer of thanks for the brave men and women who would benefit from that small victory. Another entry recounts disrupting a planned bombing raid on London. Interference successful. Loss averted. Elias would be proud. That one sent shivers down my spine even years later. To think that I, a simple woman from Willow Creek, could play a part in saving lives across the ocean. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. The artifact demanded constant vigilance. Sleep became a luxury. replaced by the relentless pressure to anticipate the enemy's next move. I was living on adrenaline and the unwavering belief that what I was doing was right. I often wondered if Elias could see me, if he knew the burden I carried, the sacrifices I made in his name and for the greater good. I hoped he understood. I hoped he approved. The war dragged on, each day a grueling test of endurance. The entries in the diary grew shorter, more terse. The joy I once found in the small things, in the blooming of a rose or the song of a bird, seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the stark reality of conflict. Then one day the hum of the artifact shifted. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I felt it deep in my bones. The intercepted communications became less frantic, the enemy's movements more disorganized. There was a sense of defeat in the air. The diary entry for that day, August 14, 1945, is just one word: peace. I remember collapsing onto the floor, the artifact slipping from my numb fingers. The relief was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to drown me. Tears streamed down my face, tears of joy, of sorrow, of exhaustion, of gratitude. The war was over. The killing had stopped. Elias's sacrifice, and the sacrifices of so many others, had not been in vain. But the peace was bittersweet. The world was scarred, broken. Millions were dead, and countless others were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. I knew I couldn't simply return to my old life, to the quiet predictability of Willow Creek. I had seen too much, done too much. I was irrevocably changed. So I packed my meager belongings, including the diary and the artifact, carefully wrapped in a soft velvet cloth. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I had a purpose. I felt drawn to the places where the wounds of war were deepest, to the communities struggling to rebuild, to the people who had lost everything. I spent the next few years working in refugee camps, helping displaced families find food, shelter, and hope. I taught children who had been orphaned by the war, sharing stories of resilience and kindness. I listened to the stories of survivors, offering comfort and a shoulder to cry on. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was deeply fulfilling. It was a way to honor Elias's memory, to use the strength I had gained during the war to make the world a little brighter. Eventually, I settled in a small town not unlike Willow Creek. I bought a little cottage with a garden overflowing with roses, just like the ones Elias used to bring me. I became a teacher, sharing my love of literature and history with the new generation. I volunteered at the local hospital, reading to the sick and elderly. I found joy in the simple things again. The warmth of the sun on my skin, the laughter of children, the comforting rhythm of everyday life. The artifact, of course, came with me. I never used it again, not in the way I had during the war. But I couldn't bear to part with it. It was a tangible reminder of Elias, of our love, of the extraordinary circumstances that had shaped my life. I kept it hidden, tucked away inside an old music box, its gentle melody a constant, comforting presence. And that, my dear, is how Aurora, the woman who once manipulated the currents of war, became Grandma Aurora, the woman who baked the best apple pies in town and always had a kind word for everyone she met. The diary too found its place. It wasn't something I shared readily. The memories it held were too precious, too painful. But I kept it close, a silent witness to my extraordinary past. It was a reminder of the courage I never knew I possessed, of the love that had sustained me through the darkest of times, and of the importance of never giving up hope, even when the world seems to be falling apart. Looking back, I realized that the war didn't just take something from me. It also gave me something. It gave me strength, resilience, and a deep appreciation for the preciousness of life. It taught me the importance of compassion, of empathy, of standing up for what is right, even when it's difficult. And it taught me the true meaning of love. Elias's love wasn't just a fleeting romance. It was a force that shaped my destiny, a beacon that guided me through the darkness, a legacy that I carried with me every day of my life. You see, child, that box, the one I told you not to open until after I was gone, it wasn't just about secrets and hidden artifacts. It was about love, sacrifice, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It was about the extraordinary life hidden beneath the seemingly ordinary surface. And it was about sharing that story with you so that you might understand the woman I was, the woman I became, and the woman I hope you will always remember. The diary and the music box, they are more than just objects. They are pieces of my heart, pieces of Elias's heart, pieces of a story that deserves to be told. Remember them, treasure them, and let them remind you that even in the darkest of times, love and hope can always prevail. The sun, a painter of golden hues, dipped low on the horizon, casting long dancing shadows across the room. I sat there, the worn leather-bound diary resting heavily in my lap, its pages filled with Aurora's secrets, her joys, her quiet battles fought in one. The box, the one she'd warned me about, sat open beside me, its contents now absorbed, understood. The air in the room felt thick with unspoken words, with echoes of a life lived fully, a life that had touched mine in ways I was only now beginning to comprehend. Before, Aurora had been Grandma, a dispenser of cookies, a weaver of fantastical tales, a warm, comforting presence that filled my childhood with laughter and a sense of unwavering security. Now she was Aurora, a woman with a past, a history etched not just in faded photographs and whispered anecdotes, but in the raw, honest words penned in her own hand. The diary hadn't just revealed secrets, it had revealed her. I traced the embossed floral design on the cover, a detail I'd overlooked countless times before. It wasn't just a pretty decoration. It was a reflection of her love for the simple beauty she found in the world, a beauty she clung to even in the face of adversity. The flowers, I realized, were forget-me-nots, a silent promise to remember, to not let the past fade away. The stories she told me as a child, the fantastical adventures of brave knights and enchanted forests, suddenly snapped into focus. They weren't just whimsical fables to lull me to sleep. They were allegories, veiled accounts of her own struggles, her own resilience. The knight battling the dragon was her, facing down the prejudices and hardships of a world that wasn't always kind. The enchanted forest, a metaphor for the tangled web of decisions and circumstances that shaped her life. And the princess, always finding strength within herself, always choosing kindness and compassion, was, without a doubt, the essence of Aurora herself. I remember asking her as a child if the princess ever got scared. She'd smiled, a knowing glint in her eye, and said, "Of course, darling." But even when she was scared, she never let fear rule her heart. At the time it seemed like a simple platitude. Now it resonated with the force of a thunderclap. Aurora had faced her own dragons, her own dark forests, and she'd emerged, not unscathed but stronger, wiser, and with an unwavering commitment to living a life of purpose. Her legacy wasn't the old jewelry tucked away in the box, or the faded photographs, or even the diary itself. Her legacy was the quiet strength she exuded, the wisdom she imparted through her stories, the unconditional love she showered upon me. It was the way she made me feel seen, heard, and valued, even when I was a clumsy, awkward child struggling to find my place in the world. It was the unwavering belief she had in my potential, a belief that often sustained me through moments of doubt and uncertainty. The diary revealed the intricate threads that wove together the rich, complex tapestry of her life. There were moments of profound joy, of deep connection, of unwavering hope. But there were also moments of heartbreak, of loss, of quiet desperation. She wrote of sacrifices made, of dreams deferred, of battles fought in silence. And yet, through it all, there was a current of resilience, a determination to find beauty and meaning even in the darkest of times. I thought of my own life, my own challenges, the anxieties that gnawed at me, the insecurities that held me back, the moments when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all. I'd always admired Aurora, but I'd never truly understood the depth of her strength, the wellspring of courage that sustained her. Now, knowing her story, I felt a surge of inspiration, a renewed sense of purpose. If she could face her dragon, so could I. If she could find beauty in the darkness, so could I. The setting sun painted the room in shades of orange and purple, a breathtaking display of nature's artistry. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, and felt a sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't the peace of resolution, of having all the answers. It was the peace of acceptance, of understanding. I understood Aurora not just as my grandmother, but as a woman, a warrior, a survivor. And in understanding her, I understood myself a little better too. The diary was more than just a collection of words on a page. It was a map to Aurora's soul, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love, hope, and resilience can prevail. And it was a gift, a precious inheritance that I would cherish for the rest of my life. I opened my eyes and looked at the diary again, its worn leather cover gleaming softly in the fading light. I knew that I would revisit its pages often, not just to remember Aurora, but to draw strength from her story, to be inspired by her courage, and to honor her legacy by living a life that was true to my own values, my own dreams. The stories we inherit, the secrets we uncover, the lives that came before us, they shape us in ways we often don't realize. They whisper to us from the past, guiding us, inspiring us, reminding us that we are not alone. We are part of a continuum, a chain of lives linked together by love, loss, and the enduring human quest for meaning. And so, I will tell Aurora's story. I will share her diary, her wisdom, her love with future generations. I will ensure that her voice is not silenced, that her legacy is not forgotten, because her story is not just her story, it is our story. It is the story of resilience, of hope, of the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a story that deserves to be told, and a story that deserves to be remembered. The room grew darker, the shadows lengthening, but inside, a light had been kindled, a flame of understanding and appreciation that would burn brightly for years to come. I closed the diary, holding it close to my heart, and whispered a silent thank you to Aurora. Thank you for the cookies, thank you for the stories, and thank you for the courage to share your truth, even when it was difficult. Thank you for teaching me that even in the face of darkness, there is always hope. Thank you for teaching me that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And thank you for teaching me that the greatest legacy we can leave behind is the story of a life well lived. Perhaps the most important lesson Aurora unknowingly taught me was the importance of uncovering the hidden narratives within our own families and communities. We often focus on grand historical events, on the lives of famous figures, but the true richness of human experience lies in the stories of ordinary people, the stories of our ancestors, the stories of those who shaped us. These are the stories that connect us to the past, that give us a sense of belonging, that inspire us to create a better future. And so, let us all be storytellers. Let us seek out the hidden narratives, the untold tales, the forgotten voices. Let us honor the lives of those who came before us by sharing their stories with the world. For in their stories we find our own. In their struggles we find our strength. And in their love we find our hope. My dears, as the last echoes of Aurora's story settle in your hearts, I hope you feel the warmth of her spirit, the resilience that bloomed even in the face of shadows. Her life wasn't always easy, not by a long shot. There were days filled with a quiet desperation, moments where the weight of the world seemed to press down with unrelenting force. But even then, even when the darkness threatened to consume her, Aurora found a spark, a flickering ember of hope that she guarded with fierce determination. That spark, my dears, was love. Love for her family, love for her dreams, and perhaps most importantly, love for herself. You see, Aurora understood something profound, that even the smallest act of kindness, the quietest act of courage, can ripple outwards, creating waves of positive change. She knew that even when facing insurmountable odds, one could choose to stand tall, to meet the storm head-on with a spirit unbroken. And that, my dears, is the essence of her legacy. It's not about grand gestures or heroic feats. It's about the everyday acts of love and resilience that define who we are. The secret diary, that little box she entrusted to me, wasn't just filled with words. It was filled with her heart, her soul poured onto those fragile pages. Each entry was a testament to her unwavering spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, beauty and hope can still be found. Reading it, I felt as though I was walking beside her, sharing her joys and sorrows, her triumphs and defeats. It was a journey of profound connection, a reminder that we are all bound together by the shared human experience. If Aurora's story has touched you, if it has resonated within your own heart, then it has served its purpose. Stories, you see, are not just words on a page or images on a screen. They are living, breathing entities that take root within us, shaping our perspectives and inspiring us to be better versions of ourselves. They are the threads that connect us to the past, the compass that guides us in the present, and the seeds that we plant for the future. And Aurora's story, like all stories worth telling, deserves to be shared, to be passed down from one generation to the next. Because within its pages lies a powerful message, that even in the face of adversity, we have the power to choose our own path, to define our own destiny. That we have the power to love fiercely, to forgive generously, and to live with unwavering courage. I remember one evening many years ago, Aurora and I were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the fields. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, and the crickets were chirping their evening song. She turned to me, her eyes twinkling in the fading light, and said, "You know, my dear, life is like a garden. It requires constant tending, constant care. You have to weed out the negativity, nurture the good, and always remember to water the seeds of hope." Her words have stayed with me ever since. And as I reflect on her life, I realize that she lived by those very principles. She cultivated a garden of love and resilience, and the fruits of her labor continue to nourish us to this day. She faced her hardships with grace, never allowing them to define her. Instead, she used them as opportunities for growth, for learning, and for becoming a stronger, more compassionate person. And that, my dears, is the real magic of Aurora's story. It's not just about the secrets she kept or the challenges she overcame. It's about the unwavering spirit that allowed her to thrive, to bloom even in the harshest of environments. It's about the power of love, the importance of forgiveness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. I feel her presence even now, a gentle hand on my shoulder, a warm whisper in my ear. She's reminding me that her story is not just about her. It's about all of us. It's about the stories that we carry within ourselves, the secrets that we hold close to our hearts, and the lessons that we learn along the way. And so, as we come to the end of this chapter, I encourage you to carry Aurora's legacy forward. Let her story inspire you to embrace your own challenges with courage, to love with unwavering devotion, and to live with a spirit of unwavering hope. Let it remind you that even in the darkest of times, there is always light to be found, always beauty to be discovered. If Aurora's story has moved you, if it has touched your heart in any way, please leave a like. Let us know that her spirit lives on, that her message resonates within you. And if you'd like to hear more heartfelt tales, stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit, subscribe to our channel. We have so many more stories to share. Stories that will inspire you, challenge you, and remind you of the profound beauty that exists in the world. Share your thoughts below. What resonated most with you about Aurora's story? What lessons did you learn from her life? What moments touched your heart the deepest? We would love to hear your reflections, your insights, and your own personal stories. Because stories you see are meant to be shared. They are meant to connect us, to inspire us, and to remind us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves. Aurora always believed in the power of connection, in the importance of community. She knew that we are stronger together, that we can overcome any obstacle when we support each other, when we share our stories, and when we offer each other a helping hand. And so I extend my hand to you now, inviting you to join our community, to share your own stories, and to become a part of something truly special. Let us create a space where we can celebrate the beauty of the human spirit, where we can learn from each other's experiences, and where we can inspire each other to live lives of purpose, passion, and unwavering love. I remember one time Aurora told me, "The greatest stories are not written in books, but in the hearts of those who live them." She believed that every single person has a story worth telling, a story that can inspire, uplift, and transform the world. And as I look back on her life, I realize that she was right. Her story, like so many others, is a testament to the power of the human spirit, a reminder that we are all capable of extraordinary things. So as we bid farewell to Aurora's story for now, I leave you with one final question. What secret do you believe Grandma Aurora held closest to her heart? What was the one thing that she cherished above all else? The one thing that gave her the strength to face the challenges that life threw her way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I can't wait to read them. And remember, my dears, that Aurora's spirit lives on, not just in her story but in all of us. Let us carry her legacy forward. Let us live with courage, love, and unwavering resilience. Let us be the light that shines in the darkness, the hope that inspires others to believe in the power of their own dreams. Thank you for listening, and may Aurora's story stay with you always. Until next time, my dears, keep telling your stories, keep sharing your hearts, and keep believing in the power of love. Goodbye for now.